happy birthday to Billy Watt. Billy Watt. Happy birthday.
Jerk, you bum. You scum. You're an idiot. You don't deserve to be walking here. You will get what you deserve because God don't like ugly. I hope you rot in hell for what you did. 217 stab wounds. I sit on my porch at night alone and just cry. When Sherelle was murdered, a piece of me died with her.
December 18th, 2021, a Saturday night in Massachusetts. Sherell Pringle told her mother she was going on a date with the man she'd been seeing for months. By Tuesday morning, her family was standing over her body in a frozen marsh, 11 miles from home. This isn't just another domestic violence case. This is the story of a woman who did everything right. A mother, a professional, an ambitious dreamer who just had an offer accepted on her first home. And it's the story of how 217 stab wounds shattered not just one life, but an entire community's sense of safety. How did a relationship that looked normal from the outside spiral into one of the most brutal murders Massachusetts has seen in years? And what warning signs did everyone miss until it was too late? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly how love can become a weapon, and why Sherell's family never stopped fighting to make sure justice was served. You're watching Crime Bitz, where real stories hit hard, and every episode reminds us how thin the line is between love and destruction. If you're into deep, gripping true crime stories that make you think, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let's dive right into one of the most shocking cases of 2025, because this story starts long before the murder. Let me tell you about Sherell Michelle Pringle. Born January 19, 1981 in Boston, she was the youngest of 7 siblings in a tight-knit family. Pearl Garner, her mother, would later tell reporters they talked multiple times every single day. That's how close they were. Sherell wasn't just close with her mom, though. She absolutely adored her son, 19-year-old Jamani Larion. Friends described their bond as unbreakable. She was always pushing him to do more, be more, dream bigger. She was his foundation, his biggest cheerleader, his everything. Professionally, Sherell was thriving. She'd earned her associate's degree in business from Roxbury Community College, then pushed herself further to get her bachelor's degree from UMass Boston with a focus in fashion design. For over a decade, she worked at Steward Medical Group in Watertown, known as a dedicated hard worker who showed up every single day with a smile. Her obituary would later describe her as a natural-born leader, someone who always kept her foot on the gas and never let up. She loved shopping, traveling, taking pictures, living life to its fullest. She had dreams, plans, a future she was building brick by brick. And then she met Bruce Maiben. 44 years old, from Lynn, Massachusetts. They'd been dating for several months. To the outside world, they were just another couple navigating a relationship. But beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Cracks that would soon turn into fractures, and those fractures into something unimaginable. Less than a week before that fatal date, something happened that should have been a massive red flag. According to court documents, Bruce Maiben broke into Sherell's home. Not just showed up uninvited, broke in. And when he was inside, he threatened her with a knife. Let that sink in for a second. The man she was dating forced his way into her home and pulled a knife on her. Charelle did what so many women in her situation do. She confided in a friend. She sent a text message that later became crucial evidence in court. In that message, she said she was done with him. Done. She was ready to walk away. She was planning to end the relationship. But here's the heartbreaking reality about domestic violence. Leaving is often the most dangerous time. The moment a victim tries to reclaim their power, tries to set that boundary, is when abusers feel their control slipping. And that's when they become most dangerous. Sherell's family and friends would later say they had concerns about Bruce. Her son Jamani noticed things. Pearl, her mother, sensed something was off. But Sherelle, like so many women trying to navigate a difficult relationship, was probably trying to handle it on her own terms, in her own time. She couldn't have known she didn't have time left. December 18th started like any other Saturday. Sherelle saw her mother between noon and 2 p.m. She was wearing a green hoodie. She told Pearl she was going on a date that night with Bruce. Just a regular date. Nothing seemed unusual to her family at the time. Bruce picked her up. According to what he would later tell investigators, they went out to a bar in Boston. They spent the evening together. And then he claimed he dropped her off at her Woburn home between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. But Jamani was home that night. He was awake. His mother never walked through that door. Sunday morning came. No word from Sherelle. The phone calls went unanswered. The text messages sat on read or didn't deliver at all. By Sunday afternoon, her family knew something was catastrophically wrong. Sherelle didn't go a day without talking to her mother. Not one day. Their relationship wasn't like that. If Pearl didn't hear from her daughter, something had happened. On December 19th, Jamani filed a missing persons report with Woburn Police, but he already knew who they needed to find. From the very beginning, from that very first conversation with police, he told them exactly where to look. Everything ties back to this, Jamani would later tell reporters, his voice breaking with frustration and grief. He was the last person with her. If you're the last person with somebody that's missing, you should be the first one to help, the first one to the police, the first with everything. But this guy didn't want to be in contact with nobody. That's a sign right there. Jamani kept repeating the same thing to investigators. You need to locate Bruce Maiben. He lives in Lynn. You need to ping his phone and find him. But Bruce Maiben wasn't answering his phone. He wasn't cooperating with police. In fact, law enforcement sources would later reveal that Maiben was scheduled to meet with investigators on Tuesday, but never showed up. Meanwhile, Sherelle's family couldn't just sit around waiting. They did what desperate families do. They took matters into their own hands. They created flyers with her picture and plastered them all over Woburn, Lynn, Boston. Purple and white were Sherelle's favorite colors, and those flyers carried her bright smile to every corner of the community. I'm just feeling empty inside, Jamani told news cameras, his 19-year-old face aged by fear. I need my mom. I want her back, immediately. Pearl spoke to reporters too, her voice raw with a mother's agony. It's been pure hell. I'm a mother. That's my child. I feel like my heart has been ripped out. I don't know what's going on. I feel like the police should be doing much, much more. But Sherelle's family didn't just make flyers and plead on camera. They became investigators themselves. Using technology, specifically tracking Sherelle's phone, her family and friends traced her last known location. They found her phone in a catch basin, essentially a storm drain on the side of the road in Lynn, just dumped there, like trash. Then they found her purse, and then they started searching the marshy areas nearby. On Tuesday, December 21st, 2021, 3 days after Sherelle went missing, her family and friends made the discovery that would haunt them forever. In the Rumney Marsh Reservation off Route 107 in Saugus, about 11 miles north of Boston, they found Sherelle's body. Not the police, her family, her friends. The people who loved her had to be the ones to find her remains. Barbara Heileman, an employee at Atlantic Coast Dismantling near the location, witnessed the moment. I just saw a group of people looking over with a woman's pocketbook at their feet. They were looking over. They had their phones out, videotaping, and I'm assuming taking pictures. They yelled to one of our employees to call 911 and say that they found a dead body. The scene that afternoon was harrowing. Family and friends gathered along Route 107 as police vehicles surrounded the marsh. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the December wind. Investigators in protective gear combed through the frozen wetland. And Sherelle's family stood there watching, knowing she was gone, but not yet knowing the full horror of what had been done to her. The Essex County District Attorney's Office quickly announced what everyone already feared: foul play was suspected. This was no accident. This was no natural death. Sherell Pringle had been murdered. Her body told a story of unimaginable violence. According to evidence that would later emerge in court, Sherelle had been stabbed. But not just stabbed, not once or twice, or even 10 times, 217 times. Let me say that again. Bruce Maiben stabbed Sherell Pringle 217 times. Pearl Garner, Sherell's mother, would later reveal in court that the brutality was so severe that Charelle had to have a closed casket funeral. Her family couldn't even say goodbye to her face one last time. That's how much damage Bruce Maiben inflicted on the woman he claimed to love. The investigation moved quickly after Sherell's body was found. On December 23, 2021, 2 days before Christmas, Bruce Maiben was arrested. But here's where things get interesting. He wasn't initially charged with murder. Instead, prosecutors hit him with larceny over $1,200, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of justice. Why those charges first? Because investigators were building their case methodically. They needed to hold him while they gathered forensic evidence, witness statements, and built an airtight murder case. Maiben's arraignment was unlike anything Lynn District Court had seen in recent memory. Nearly 350 people logged into the Zoom hearing. The courtroom was packed with Sherell's family and friends, dozens and dozens of them showing up to witness justice beginning to unfold. When Judge William Martin brought Maiben into the courtroom, the crowd erupted. People were yelling, jeering, calling him a murderer. Someone shouted, "She's gone before Christmas." The pain in that courtroom was palpable, raw, explosive. Zoom profiles changed in real time to read "Justice for Sherell" and "Justice for Rel." The digital courtroom became a memorial, a protest, a collective scream of grief. Maiben's attorney, John Morris, tried to argue that his client shouldn't even appear in the courtroom, citing the spotlight on the case. He claimed there was nothing suggesting Maiben was actually a person of interest in the crime. Judge Martin denied that request immediately. A not guilty plea was entered on Maiben's behalf. He was held without bail. And then investigators started revealing what they'd found. Law enforcement sources told reporters that the Toyota Avalon Maiben had been driving the night prior to. Sherell disappeared, was found torched, completely burned. That's destruction of evidence, which explained the tampering charge. Investigators also believed that Sherell wasn't killed in the marsh where her body was found. The evidence suggested she was unalived at another location, then her body was transported and dumped in that marshy area. Which means Bruce Maiben didn't just unalive her in a moment of rage. He unalived her, then had the presence of mind to move her body and try to hide what he'd done. On January 4, 2022, prosecutors upgraded the charges. At what was supposed to be a dangerousness hearing, Bruce Maiben was formally charged with first-degree murder in the death of Sherell Pringle. This wasn't a surprise to anyone following the case. Everyone knew it was coming. But hearing it made official, hearing prosecutors stand up and say, "We're charging this man with murder," that made it real in a way it hadn't been before. First-degree murder in Massachusetts requires proof of premeditation. The prosecution wasn't arguing this was a heat-of-the-moment crime. They were saying Bruce Maiben planned to kill Sherell Pringle. And the evidence would support that theory. It took nearly 3 years for the case to go to trial. 3 years of Sherell's family waiting for justice. 3 years of Jamani living without his mother. 3 years of Pearl Garner waking up every morning knowing her daughter's killer was sitting in a jail cell, but not yet convicted. Throughout those 3 years, Bruce Maiben maintained his innocence. His attorney continued to insist that he did not kill his girlfriend. But in late 2024, the trial finally began in Essex County Superior Court, and Sherell's family showed up. Not just a few people, dozens of them, filling the courtroom day after day, making sure Bruce Maiben had to look at the faces of everyone he'd hurt. The prosecution laid out their case piece by piece. They showed the jury evidence of the break-in that happened just days before Sherell's murder. They presented the text message where Sherell told her friend she was done with him. They walked through the timeline of that final night, the date, the drive, the lies about dropping her off at home. They presented forensic evidence, witness testimony, phone records, surveillance footage. Everything pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Bruce Maiben unalived Sherell Pringle, then spent days trying to cover it up. The defense tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case. They argued reasonable doubt. They questioned the investigation, but the evidence was overwhelming. On Monday, November 3rd, 2024, after deliberating, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty. Guilty of first-degree murder. Bruce Maiben, now 48 years old, stood in that courtroom and heard 12 of his peers declare that he had committed the ultimate crime. He had taken Sherelle's life, stolen her future, destroyed her family. The courtroom erupted. Years of pain, grief, and anger all came flooding out in that single moment. Sherelle's family embraced each other, crying, some collapsing from the weight of relief mixed with sorrow. They'd waited so long for this moment. But the trial wasn't over, because in Massachusetts, sentencing for first-degree murder is automatic. On Wednesday, November 6th, 2024, Bruce Maiben returned to court for sentencing. First-degree murder in Massachusetts carries a mandatory sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. That means Bruce Maiben will die behind bars. He will never walk free. He will never breathe air outside prison walls again. He will spend every remaining day of his life paying for what he did to Charelle. But before the judge made that sentence official, Pearl Garner stood up to speak. Imagine being a mother in that moment. Your daughter is gone. The man who killed her is sitting 20 feet away, and you finally get to tell him exactly what you think of him. Pearl Garner looked Bruce Maiben in the eye and called him scum. She told him she hopes he rots in hell for what he did. She told him about the closed casket funeral, about not being able to see her daughter's face one last time because of his brutality. You don't deserve to be walking here, she said, her voice shaking with rage and grief. You will get what you deserve because God doesn't like ugly. It was raw. It was powerful. It was a mother's love turned into righteous fury. Essex County District Attorney Paul F. Tucker spoke after sentencing was handed down. This verdict and subsequent sentence will ensure that the defendant will be held accountable for his senseless and atrocious conduct. Our hope is that the family and friends of Sherell Pringle can find some comfort in this outcome. But can there ever really be comfort when someone you love has been taken so violently? Can justice ever truly heal a wound that deep? Sherell's family has had to live with an impossible burden. Jamani grew up without his mother. Pearl lost her daughter. Sherell's siblings lost their sister, and every single person who knew and loved Sherell has to carry the knowledge that she died in terror and pain at the hands of someone she trusted. But there's something else Sherell's family wants you to know. Something that's gotten lost in all the horror and the trial coverage and the headlines. Sherell was more than a victim. She was a person. A whole, complete, beautiful person with dreams and plans and love to give. She just had an offer accepted on a home, her first home. After years of working hard, saving money, building her career, and raising her son, she was finally going to have a place that was completely hers. The approval came after she died. She never got to move in. She never got to pick out furniture or paint the walls or plant flowers in the yard. A week after Sherell's body was found, about 200 family members and friends gathered in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood for a vigil. They released purple and white balloons into the December sky, Sherell's favorite colors floating up and up until they disappeared. To lose her in this way is unbelievable, her friend LaDawn Jackson said through tears. But for people to show up the way they did is a blessing. That's what Sherell inspired. Community, love. People showing up for each other even in the darkest moments. Her son Jamani has had to grow up way too fast. At 19, he lost his mother, his foundation, his biggest supporter. But he's also become an advocate, someone who speaks out about domestic violence, who wants other families to recognize warning signs before it's too late. Because here's the devastating truth. Sherell's story isn't unique. It's not an outlier. It's part of a pattern that repeats itself over and over across this country. Every year, intimate partner violence accounts for roughly 1,500 deaths. That's 1,500 families destroyed. 1,500 victims who trusted the wrong person. And those are just the deaths. Millions more women experience non-fatal intimate partner violence every year. They're threatened, controlled, isolated, hurt, and many of them, like Charelle, are trying to leave, trying to break free, trying to set boundaries and reclaim their lives. The most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they try to leave. Research shows that women are 70 times more likely to be killed in the weeks after leaving an abusive partner than at any other time during the relationship. 70 times more likely. Think about that. The moment you gather the courage to walk away, to say, I'm done, to start rebuilding your life, that's when you're in the most danger. Sherelle sent that text message saying she was done with Bruce Maiben. Less than a week later, she was dead. The warning signs were there. The break-in, the knife threat, the controlling behavior that her family had noticed. But Sherelle, like so many victims, was probably trying to manage the situation carefully. She was probably worried about making him angrier, worried about what he might do, trying to time her exit just right. And she ran out of time. If you're watching this and you see yourself in Sherelle's story, if you have a partner who's controlling, who threatens you, who makes you feel afraid, please hear me. It doesn't get better on its own. That person will not change just because you love them enough, or try hard enough, or walk on eggshells carefully enough. Please reach out. Make a safety plan. Talk to someone who understands what you're going through, because your life is worth saving. Think about that last Saturday when she saw her mother between noon and 2 p.m. Did she know it would be the last time? Did she have a feeling something was wrong? Or was she just living her life, going on what she thought was a regular date? Maybe even hopeful that things could work out? Think about Jamani, awake at 3 a.m, waiting for his mother to come home, and she never did. That moment when he realized something was terribly wrong. The helplessness of being 19 years old and knowing your mom is missing, and the person who was last with her won't talk to police. Think about Pearl Garner, a mother who talked to her daughter multiple times every day, and suddenly those calls stopped. The silence must have been deafening. And think about Sherelle herself. In those final moments, she knew she wanted to leave. She'd told her friend she was done. She was planning her exit. But she agreed to one more date, probably trying to end things as peacefully as possible. She didn't know that Bruce Maiben had already decided that if he couldn't have her, no one could. She didn't know that his love had twisted into something monstrous. She didn't know that she was walking into her own end. 217 stab wounds. That's not just murder. That's rage. That's hatred. That's a man who felt so entitled to a woman's life that when she tried to take it back, he destroyed her completely. But Sherell Pringle was not destroyed. Her body was. Her physical presence in this world was. But who she was, the mother, the daughter, the sister, the friend, the ambitious woman with dreams and plans and love to give, that can never be destroyed. Her family makes sure of that. They tell her story. They keep her memory alive. They fight to make sure other women don't suffer the same fate. Bruce Maiben is serving life without parole in a Massachusetts prison. He's 48 years old now. If he lives to be 80, he'll die behind bars. If he lives to be 90, he'll die behind bars. There is no redemption arc for him, no second chance, no possibility of parole. And honestly, that feels like justice. Maybe not enough justice to heal the wound he left in Sherelle's family, but justice nonetheless. Sherelle's case is closed. Bruce Maiben has been convicted and sentenced. But the fight against domestic violence continues every single day. If you're in an abusive relationship, please understand, it is not your fault. You are not responsible for someone else's violence. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be free. And there are people who will help you get there. If someone you know is in an abusive relationship, don't ignore it. Don't assume they'll figure it out on their own. Ask them directly if they're safe. Offer support without judgment. Help them make a safety plan. Be there for them. And if you're someone who's felt that jealous rage, that need to control your partner, that anger when they try to set boundaries, get help. Talk to a therapist. Call a helpline for people struggling with anger and control. Do the work to change before you become the next headline, before you destroy lives the way Bruce Maiben did. Sherell Pringle should be alive. She should be living in her new home, spending time with Jamani, calling her mother 3 times a day, taking pictures of her life and sharing them with everyone she loved. She should be here. But she's not. Because one man decided his feelings mattered more than her life. Don't let that be someone else's story. If you see something, say something. If you feel something's wrong, trust that instinct. If you need help, ask for it. Sherell's family wants her death to mean something. They want it to save lives. They want other women to see the warning signs earlier, to leave sooner, to survive. Let's honor that. Let's make sure Sherell Pringle's story is the one that finally makes someone reach out for help, the one that saves a life. Before you go, I need to ask you something. Do you think the justice system handled this case appropriately? Life without parole, is that enough for what Bruce Maiben did? Or does it feel like there should be something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and if this story touched you, if it made you think differently about domestic violence or relationships or red flags, hit that subscribe button, like, and share this video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about Sherell's story. And please, stay safe out there. Justice for Sherell Pringle. Always.